Today is super exciting because today is my hands-on first impressions video of the new Labpano Pilot One for you. It's a pre-production test device that's been sent by the company for me to try out and tell you what I think about it. I don't get to keep it and I wasn't paid to make this video in any shape or form. So you can be sure that what I'm telling you here and in my other videos testing out all the features of the camera coming up in the next couple of weeks are my honest opinion. But I better get moving. This camera needs to be sent back at the end of this month. Hi, my name's Saab Johal and thanks for joining me on my channel showcasing light and easy mobile video making and gear. If you enjoyed this video and get some value from it, please give it a like, drop me a comment down below and consider subscribing. Cheers. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, this is an 8K camera. How does this fit into showcasing light and easy mobile video making and gear? Well, the simple reason is that one of the main features of this device is that it's supposed to make what can be a very complicated process into something really simple. And what I'm talking about here is virtual tours. Make sure you watch to the end because later on in this video, I'll tell you how the Pilot One looks like a really promising solution to making virtual tours. For now, let's jump right on in to see just how this Pilot One stacks up. Let's start out with how it looks and feels. Now, the form factor is pretty similar to the Pilot era, its big sibling. 4 lenses on each side of an oblong or rectangular shape. The lens is curiously offset to one side rather than being in the center of each face of the unit, which is interesting. I'm not sure what this could be about, but perhaps it's something to do with the efficiency and different options and capabilities for stitching. Now these are 1/2.3 inch lenses, each at 12 megapixels, which seems to be pretty common in this category of camera. Now the lenses in the Pilot One seem to be rated at f2.28, which means a slightly more shallow depth of field is going to be possible than for the Pilot era 8K. The screen is bright and responsive, but I found that when you need to type in details for things like passwords and things to connect the device to things like Wi-Fi, the keyboard can be a little bit on the pokey side. Still, it gets things done, and it's pretty awesome to have a screen like this built into the device, enabling you to choose between different live views of what you're choosing. Double tapping the display screen toggles between a 360 tiny planet type view, a regular 2D view that you can scroll through, a mirrorball view, and an equi-rectangular view too. Now the Pilot era 8K is pretty much a standalone device, and the Pilot One makes a similar approach. But because it's so much smaller, you do lose some of the functionality. Labpano have taken a modular approach so that you're able to buy 4G and 5G capability modules as connectable add-ons, whereas the Pilot era has 4G capability and space for a SIM card built in. You also need to buy a GPS module for that functionality, but I believe pre-orders at the moment get that thrown in for free, or at least they did. Check out the order page in my description to see if that offer is still valid. At under half the weight of the Pilot era, and it's considerably slimmer too. It looks far more pocketable than the Pilot era 8K, which I've never actually used, but this Pilot One doesn't feel flimsy at all. Although the panels and main body are definitely plasticky, in my pre-production unit, it feels satisfyingly weighty and chunky, and it does have a quality feel to it, even though if it does have a little bit of a retro 80s design vibe to it. It's also noticeable that the screw thread mount is metal and is reassuringly deep, meaning it's less likely to come off your tripod inadvertently. However, it's not so light that you want to be throwing it around the place like I do my Insta360 One X or anything like that. This is built, I think, for a much more static and sedate usage, though you may prove me wrong. It would be an expensive camera to wreck though. Now the Pilot era has a whopping 512 gigabytes built in for intense applications and for producing virtual tours and other mapping types of activity. The Pilot One has a more modest 64 gigabytes built in, and when I switch on the device it tells me that I have 55.65 gigabytes available for storage, and that looks like it. I didn't see anywhere to insert an SD card or to expand my storage memory on my test device anyway. The monster battery in the Pilot era was a beast to carry on powering the Pilot era whilst it live streamed, Google Street Maps and everything else in between. Now the Pilot One battery is rated as being able to power the camera for 2 hours and is non-removable, meaning hooking up the camera to a power bank to keep using it beyond that point if you can't charge the device. The Pilot One has a 9-axis gyroscope and what it is calling Pilot Steady, offering real-time image stabilization as well as what they are calling an advanced thermal architecture, meaning it can work in up to 45 degrees, which I think is pretty extreme, but something that people are worried about using their cameras in hot conditions or over an extended period of time where the heat will build up in the camera. Now the Pilot One is Google Street View certified, but it looks like you need to buy a GPS component, meaning that it's a little bit of a step down from the Pilot era in terms of what you get supplied. I imagine the Pilot One would have been able to take the GPS coordinates from your phone in order to access Google Street View mode, but when I tried it in the Pilot Go app, which is in beta but associates with the Pilot One, that function wasn't available. So at the moment, from my pre-production model testing, that's not possible. It seems that if you want to use the Pilot One for Google Street View, you'll need to get the GPS module. That's my understanding. Now, as well as the GPS module, the Pilot One seems to have a fair few accessories planned. For example, waterproof and a dive case. It comes with a nice neoprene little case with a little carabiner attachment too, which helps to protect the fragile lenses. My test device also came with a little extension for a tripod or selfie pole, meaning that you have clearance to access the USB-C port when it's in use. So yes, on the bottom of the camera, you'll also find, as well as this charging slot for USB-C, it also seems to have mounting slots for expansion units like GPS or networking. And at the bottom of the device, you also see a 3.5mm jack for a mic in as well, which is fantastic to be able to add that audio input to, as well as the built-in mic. Now, let's get into the camera. You can navigate through the menus using the home button, which is here, and the nice high-res touchscreen, which looks like a customized Android operating system, just like the Pilot era. The settings screen is where you choose how you wish to connect to your device. In this case, I didn't get any of the additional modules to test, which means that I can't report back on Ethernet or LTE. I just connected to my home Wi-Fi for now, which is painless and easy to do on the screen. You can switch out the bottom Nadir logo if you want. The Pilot One makes it easy for you to do that if you want to. And there are also settings for screen, date, and time. There's sound through changing the settings for the loudness of the speaker and the sensitivity of the microphone too. And it looks to me like there's just one of each of the microphone and the loudspeaker. I didn't get any detailed documentation, so the full production model might have more detail on that, but that's what I can tell you for now. So you can also turn off the shutter sounds for photo and video and live streaming, or adjust them to be louder or quieter, which is handy. The language options available seem to be English and Chinese in this pre-production model, but there is also an option around the cooling radiator fan too, as to whether to have it set to always on, always off, or auto as needed. All right, let's get to the meat. What are the possible options here in all the different modes? Let's start on the left-hand side of the menu, and you'll see the option for Pilot Tour, which is the virtual tour option. I'll be doing an in-depth review and test of the Pilot Tour feature in just a few days from now, so make sure you subscribe if you want to make sure that you don't miss out, and stay tuned till the end of this video and I'll tell you why it's so important. At the top of the screen is an HDR selector, which you can toggle on and off, and you'll also see here that on the top right hand of the screen is a Pro icon. Press that and it takes you out of auto mode, where the Pilot One makes all the selections to get a good exposure for you, so you can have more control over these settings options. Let's go through these here, because these options go over to all the other shooting modes too, or at least some do and some don't, but it's pretty constant. Okay, so the HDR conditions possible are sunny, cloudy, or indoor, and the shutter speed varies from 1/3200 to 1500, 150, and 15. It seems like a bit of a jump from 1/3200 to 1/1000 to me, but it's probably okay for most purposes. The ISO options include auto, 50, 100, 200, 400, 800, and 1600, and the exposure compensation to adjust the amount of light is -4 to +4. And white balance is auto, sunny, cloudy, incandescent, and fluorescent light, the standard things you would normally hope to find. And finally, stitch focus from infinity down to 2 meters, which is recommended if you are shooting in a small space, for example, doing an indoor virtual tour. So if you tap on the settings cog, a couple more options become available in this mode. The photo resolution from 8K down to 2K, and you can also select a self timer option known as countdown in the menu, with an interval of 3, 5, 10, or 15 seconds. Lots of time for you to run and hide if you need to get out of the shot. Okay, let's move along. Second along on the menu is the time-lapse option. Let's dig in here to see what's possible. Okay, looking at the Pro options first, they make ISO, EV and stitch focus distance available for you to alter. If we go down to the settings cog, then as well as the resolution and the countdown timer, which we've seen before, a couple more options become available. First is the scale rate, varying from speeding up what you're recording by 20 times, taking one frame every 0.3 seconds, all the way to 10,000 times, where one frame is taken only every 5.6 minutes. Now I imagine that's the sort of thing you might be doing if you're doing a time-lapse over a very long period of time. For example, watching a building site being transformed as the building takes place. Now the final option here is Pilot Steady, Labpano's stabilization algorithm. So it'll be interesting to see how any time-lapse video looks when this is switched on or turned off. So be sure to come back and watch another video where I show you not only footage from the time-lapse function, but how it looks with Pilot Steady turned on or off. But you can see a short test here that I did with everything on auto. Okay, let's move on. Next in the menu is the option for photos, and we immediately have a new option that enables you to calibrate what the camera calls the compass, which is probably a good idea to do every now and again to make sure things like the horizon stays where you want it to. You'll also see that in the top left-hand corner, there is an icon here that if I touch it, tells me that I have no GPS signal, which is no surprise because I don't have the GPS module. But if you did have that, then I guess that's where the GPS functionality would be found. Again, there is a toggle switch for HDR on off. So let's look at the Pro settings to see if we can tweak those. And yes, it's the same options as before for HDR, shutter speed, ISO, EV, white balance, and stitch focus. Now the settings cog here in this mode gives two more options to select from, whether you want optical flow stitching on or off and auto leveling for photos, which might be very handy to try to keep those level horizons. Again, I'll be testing this in full in a future video, so be sure to come back. Here's a couple of photos I took here for you to see what's possible. And in this photo, I've also edited it using the options available in device. So all the post-processing I did very quickly on the Pilot One itself using the options available on the touchscreen. It was very quick with just a few tweaks, which is very cool. Okay, moving along. Next in the menu is the option for unstitched video. Now, once again, you have Pro options available for ISO, EV, and choosing your stitching distance. And this time, the settings cog gives you different resolution options for the video, including 8K at 24 frames per second, 7K at 24 frames per second, 6K at 30 frames per second, and also 4K at 30 frames per second too. You also have the option for Pilot Steady, which can either be fixed to one thing that you're filming or following the point of view of the camera too, as the default view that you will see. Okay, now moving along again, option 5 for stitched video gives some similar settings with some important differences, notably the frame rates for video at different resolutions. This time 8K is only available at 7 frames per second, 6K at 15 frames per second, 4K at 30 frames per second, and 2K at 30 frames per second too. Now this doesn't seem that usable to me, unless you're using it just to preview what you might want to capture for some reason. Seems to me that the best option is always going to be to shoot unstitched and then stitch in camera afterwards. In my few test shots so far, in-camera stitching of unstitched video was pretty quick. So to get those higher frame rates, this is definitely worth bearing in mind.
Start with the front foot. Front foot's fine, just roll on please. Roll on, roll on. Can you just take that back one frame and then freeze it at point of impact? And just take it back another frame for me and just roll it through.
Okay, the last option I'm going to talk about here is the Google Street View option. In the Pro settings this time, I can only change EV and stitch focus distance. And in the settings cog, I have the ability to record at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 frames per second. Now the camera is advertised as Street View ready, but because I haven't got the GPS module, I can't test it. Now I did try this with the Pilot Go Beta app, which I had available, but it doesn't seem to be able to take the GPS data from the phone for Google Street View. So at the moment, it does look like you'll need the module if you want to shoot Google Street View. All right, let's get back to virtual tours now and what the Pilot One offers. As my friend Mick Ty says, if a photo says 1,000 words, then a 360 photo is the whole book. There is no better way to visualize the internal area of any space than with an interactive 360 video. And now it's possible for anyone to shoot super high quality 360 photos for real estate. And virtual tours are becoming an increasingly popular tool for realtors to show off their most impressive listings. But how easy is it for us to create these VR tours, and what camera should you use? Well, shooting virtual tours, when you're doing that, you have to strike a balance between photo quality and speed. Quality depends on the image quality, but also factors that can impact your ability to take repeatably good quality photos. And your workflow, on the other hand, takes into account both the time and the effort that would be required to process your photos and to link them all together and to find hosting and all these sorts of things that you have to do. It's actually quite a complex process. Now, this is where the Pilot One looks like it might hit the sweet spot with high quality, reliable capture and a streamlined workflow. So be sure to subscribe to check out my upcoming tests of the Pilot One, including this virtual tour feature. So my impression is that this is a solidly built camera, and it seems most likely that this is going to be a virtual tour machine, a workhorse to enable you to deliver seamless and easy virtual tours for clients and also Google Street too. And I think that that's what Labpano intends for this camera. What do you think about what you've seen so far? What would you like me to test in the time that I have this camera? I'd love to read your comments and talk more about this in the comments below. So thanks for watching. Remember to like the video if you liked it and click notifications so you know when I've posted any more. Thanks as always for watching. Here's some more of my videos you might find useful and interesting. In the meantime, cheers and go well.